You guys actually have quite a bit of momentum given the general dismissal of this campaign in the national
and you
media.
haven't seen anything yet, Alex, because everything we've done, I'm an entrepreneur and operator, we have done everything on the cheap. But thanks to the Yang Gang, we raised $10 million last quarter, and you're going to see, after we have some resources to put to work, you're going to see us outperform the other campaigns and shock the world.
How does Joe Biden only have $9 million and you're raising millions of dollars? What is that math about?
Americans understand that we need to actually start solving the problems of the 21st century.
You think it's the whole thing of like the no tie, the real talk, like that's what people want?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a politician, and so the fact that people can sense that I'm just like them, I'm a parent, like I'm not someone who's made a career in politics, and my interest in making a career in politics is moderately low. I'm for term limits. I think the fact that people make a career out of being in DC is not good for the country.
If the Democratic primary in 2020 is similar to the Republican primary in 2016, it means that Andrew Yang is Donald Trump and will be the nominee.
Oh, well, Alex, one poll came out that said that I was one of the only candidates in the field that 10% or more of Donald Trump voters say they would support in the general. And the number one criteria that Democrats have for the nominee is beating Donald Trump. So when Dems realize that they have a candidate who can peel off hundreds of thousands of Trump voters and is one of the surest bets to beat him in 2020, that's when you'll see our poll numbers just climb and climb.
Do you think you're going to be the Democratic nominee?
Yeah, 100%.
What doubts do you have?
We have all of the pieces in place, and we've been doing everything on a shoestring this whole time. We're about to pour gas on the fire that is the Yang guys.
We outperform expectations, and essentially anything I do is going to outperform expectations because people are so like, oh. So if I go in there and I beat like a couple of credible candidates, it's like, oh, I was okay. I come here to New Hampshire and we shock the world. Yeah. New Hampshire is an open primary. Anyone can vote in the Democratic primary. So if you're a Republican, who are you going to participate in? Donald Trump stopping William Weld, or the Democratic race, which is much more interesting? You're going to come over, you vote for Andrew Yang. Every poll is underestimating our support because the polls are just talking to registered Democrats. How many of you all are not registered Democrats? That's what I'm talking about. If you guys vote, they don't see you coming.
That's a beautiful thing.
So then we shocked the world in New Hampshire, and the world was like, what just happened? Andrew Yang just did what in New Hampshire? And then we go to Nevada, where we're very strong. Or that's North Carolina, and then Super Tuesday, I get swept into the White House. Now this is at your question.
So some of you, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support I'm getting from the Asian American community, but some of you, I'm sure, doubt whether or not I can win. I understand. It's cool. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I understand how to get things done in the key deliverables. So one of the big issues you all have is like, hey, Asian American, we're only 5.8% of the population. Like how is he going to be able to compete with these big name Democrats and politicians who have like massive levels of resources, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to share with you all something that I hope excites you half as much as it excites me. Again, I'm an Asian guy who likes math. So what I need to do to launch my campaign and win the presidency is win the state of Iowa. Now, Iowa has 3.1 million people. How many or what percent of Iowans do you think participated in the Democratic caucus in 2016?
40,000.
So 40,000 Iowans. So fewer than 6% of Iowans actually participated in the Democratic caucus. It was 170,000 in 2016. It will be about 200,000 in 2020. So again, numbers. How many Democrats are going to run for president in 2020?
20.
About 20, let's say. So if you have 200,000 Iowans participating in the Democratic caucus, and the reason that number is so low is because a caucus is a 2-hour commitment where you have to go and publicly say, I support Andrew Yang for president to your neighbors. You have to self-organize in a room. You go through multiple rounds. You argue with each other. You debate. It takes 2 hours. Plus, it's the winter in Iowa, and Iowa's very, very cold. So if you have 200,000 Iowans voting and 20 candidates, how many do I need to win the whole thing? I need approximately 30 to 40,000 Iowans to vote for me because 15 to 20% would be enough to put me in the top several candidates if there are 20 candidates who run. So what seems very, very difficult actually boils down to whether or not I can get 30 to 40,000 Iowans to vote for me in 2020. And I have now been to Iowa 5 times, and what I do is I say to them, how many of you notice stores closing where you live? And all of their hands go up. And then I ask them, why are your stores closing? And they say Amazon. And I say, that's exactly right. Is that going to get worse or is that going to get better? Worse. And then I give them the big question. I say, what are you going to do about it? And then they say, what can we do about it? And then I tell them what you can do about it is you can make me president, and then I will return to you $1,000 that right now is getting sucked up into Seattle and out of Iowa. You can rebuild your communities and your Main Street economy. You create 40,000 jobs here in Iowa, and you would give your children a reason to stay. And I'll tell you, that message works really, really well in Iowa. I can get 30 to 40,000 of them to respond to that message. I can finish in the top 3 in Iowa in 2020. And then imagine the headlines around the country and the world when I finish 1, 2, or 3 in Iowa, where the Asian man who wants to give everyone $1,000 comes out of nowhere and wins Iowa. That is achievable. And that is achievable because of all of you here tonight. Because if you contribute to my campaign, I'm going to spend it all in Iowa. I'm going to bring it to Iowa, take your dollars and say, hey, I have a guy who's dropping out of Harvard Law School as we speak to go to Iowa City and work on my campaign. Because he's a young Jewish man and he thinks this country is going to hell. And he says, you know what? If I can do something to stop it, I'm going to leave Harvard Law and help Andrew Yang become president. And this kid is mega talented, and there are many more like him that are working on my campaign. Matt Shinner's over there. He also went to Harvard Law. Let's give him a round of applause. So with people like that, and your resources, and the Asian American community behind me, I can win Iowa, we can shock the world, and we can make history. Because I gotta tell you, the people of Iowa, they take so much pride in the fact that they elected Barack Obama president. And also, they actually take a lot of pride in the fact they elected Jimmy Carter president. For those of you guys remember this, like Jimmy Carter came out of Iowa, Barack Obama came out of Iowa, and Andrew Yang is going to come out of Iowa in 2020. I'm going to close with something. I'm going to relate to you all some things I said to the APAPA board and another organization of Chinese Americans. Is that Asian Americans right now, raise your hand if you feel like we're allowed to become this successful in this country, but we're not allowed to become this successful. You know what I mean? Many of us feel that way. We feel like we should just be grateful for the fact that we're able to make a good living and provide for our families, and we shouldn't try and ascend past a certain point in American leadership or American society. Now, there are a few things I would want to impart to you all. Is many of you, I believe, would enjoy an Asian American becoming president in 2021. I would certainly enjoy it. That would be me. And then I would rename the White House the Gold House, have regular dim sum offerings, get the best Asian chefs, and we would have giant tastings at the White House. Oh yeah, you guys like that one in particular, right? But many of you think that it's not possible for an Asian American to get that far, even though I just shared with you the numbers in Iowa. We can totally do it. So the first thing is that Asian Americans have a tendency to work their way up within organizations and to be strong workers and think that we'll be rewarded. But I'm here to share with you all, politics does not work that way. And if we wait and we think if we have an Asian American mayor or congressman or even governor or senator, that person will just be anointed president because they do good work, that will never happen. That is not the way this country functions. And that in order for there to be an Asian American president, first of all, one of us has to run. Right? The second thing is that we think we do not have that much power because we're only 5.8% of the population. We're spread out in different parts of the country. We don't have a critical mass, and politicians more or less ignore us. And I will tell you all, the politicians do more or less ignore us. That I've talked to people in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and they do not consider us a very important constituency. At best, they consider us a source of money somewhat. But we don't vote at very high levels. We don't really even donate at the levels that our wealth and income would suggest. So they do not care about us. They honestly don't. Like, I have a friend who was with Chuck Schumer, and Chuck Schumer has a lot of Asian constituents, and he just asked Chuck, he said, can you name one of your Asian donors? And he couldn't do it. And he's got a lot of them. He couldn't even do it. So right now, there is this sense that we're an afterthought in political life, and we are. But this is a chance for us to upend that in two ways. So 5.8% of the population, not a big number, unless you have a wide open Democratic field and there are 20 candidates. If you have 20 candidates and there's an Asian American candidate, let's call him Andrew Yang, and he has a significant proportion of the 5.8%, let's call it 3 or 4%, that alone is enough to make me a top 10 candidate in a crowded field. That alone is enough to get me onto the main debate stage alongside Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of them. And how great would it be for our community to have an Asian American up there on that stage next summer? And that is completely realistic just based on the 5.8% of the population that we are. The second thing is that you in California are used to being an afterthought in presidential contests because you guys are very late in the process, and by the time it gets to you, it's already been decided. But you might have noticed that they actually moved California up to number 5 this year. I don't know, how many of you knew that? They got moved up to number 5. You guys would because you're very politically active. Most of you didn't know that. Oh, this is exciting. So before you guys were like way in the back. You're like 28 and like no one cared. So the Democrats of California said, we're tired of being an afterthought. We're going to move all the way up to number 5. So the order this year, in 2020, this cycle, is Iowa number 1, New Hampshire number 2, South Carolina number 3, Nevada number 4, and then California number 5. So if you have a crowded field, which you do, the odds of the nomination being decided by the time it gets to California, very low. California is actually going to be a hotbed. California is going to decide who's going to be the Democratic nominee. And so for the first time in the time I can remember, Asian Americans will be an incredibly important voting bloc because who Asian Americans in California support has a much higher chance of becoming the Democratic nominee. So this is an historic chance. Again, I hope you guys appreciate this. I'm like an Asian guy who likes numbers. I figured out the numbers, and this is the lever. And the third thing I'm going to close on and leave you all with is that sense that we have that we're somewhat diminished or marginalized or second-class citizens. The main reason I'm running for president is that I have been around the people that are supposed to run our country, and we are as smart, as good, as educated, as moral, and we love this country and our families just as much as anyone else, and there's no reason why one of us cannot be the President of the United States in 2021. So, thank you to CC, thank you Ken, thank you Joel, thank you Anthony, and thank you all for being here tonight. We'd love to meet you all individually, but let's show what we can do, and let's show what Asian Americans can do when we get our heart and spirit into something, and we're going to change the history of this country together. Thank you all very much.